Shalom, shalom. Going to read today's readings with you after the blessing. Here we go. The blessing of the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. V'ha'arevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu ufi amcha beit Yisrael. ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל, כולנו יודעי שמך, ולומדי תורתך לשמה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל. Blessed are you, Hashem, O God, King of the universe, who has us with his commandments and has commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Please, Hashem, our God, sweeten the words of your Torah in our mouth and in the mouth of your people, the family of Israel. May we, and our offspring, and the offspring of your people, the house of Israel, all of us, know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Hashem, who teaches Torah to his people, Israel. Amen. And that is the commonwealth of Israel. So if you're a Gentile believer, you are in there as well as the house of Israel, the house of Judah. As Ephesians 2 shows us, and you have been, because you've been grafted in, as Romans 11 shows us. So we'll go now to the Torah. To Genesis 42, verses 1 through 4, where it says, Now Yaakov, or Jacob, saw that there was grain in Egypt. How could he see that there was grain in Egypt? He's a long way off from Egypt. Did he turn on CNN? I don't think so. How did he see that there was grain in Egypt? He probably saw his neighbors coming back from Egypt during this famine, with wagons full of grain or something, right? It makes sense. So, in times of distress, we all learn from each other. We learn from our neighbors how to cope and how to get along. So Yaakov said to his sons, why are you staring at each other? Of course, this is a figure of speech. They're not literally sitting there staring at each other, but they're not doing anything, right? Why are you staring at each other? Look, or behold, look at these wagons, or whatever. He said, I've heard... there's the clue. He didn't necessarily see wagons. I've heard that there's grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us from there so we can stay alive and not die. He was a little irritated at them for not doing anything about their situation. Apparently things had gotten very dire in the nations around Egypt because of this famine. And seems like common sense. Why don't you people follow common sense? We're in this very dangerous situation. You need to do something about it. So thus Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. Notice it's only 10 brothers went down to Egypt. There were still 11 with Joseph sold into slavery, and his father Yaakov thought he was dead, tore up by lions because of that little fiasco. He still has 11 brothers. So why did only 10 go down to buy grain in Egypt? Except for Binyamin, Joseph's brother. Yaakov did not send him with his brothers because he was afraid something might happen to him. I wonder, it sounds like Yaakov was a little suspicious about the circumstances of Joseph's disappearance. I mean, why would he be so afraid that something might happen to him specifically? Or alternatively, maybe it's, why the greater love for Binyamin over the other brothers. And that leads us to back to Rachel, or Rachel, who was the wife that he always wanted, the one he worked for, actually 14 years, because he worked for 7 years, didn't get her. He was tricked and worked another 7 years for her, 14 years. You might even say the next six were for her to be able to provide well for her. So you could say he worked like 20 years for her. And then he lost her very shortly thereafter on the way back to his father's house. Maybe you've worked very hard for something in your life only to have lost it very quickly, and maybe it disturbed you, or maybe you have um, a favorite child for similar reasons. Hopefully, you love all your children. I don't think this means that Yaakov didn't love his other children, but uh, he did have a favorite apparently because of the ties to his favorite, most loved wife from the past. And it's okay to have feelings like that. Uh, you can't deny how you feel. Doesn't necessarily make it right, but you can't deny your feelings. They are what they are. You can, however, control your feelings. You might have passion about something, but it doesn't make your passion doesn't necessarily make it right. You might not have all the facts about a situation, right? And feel very passionate. And maybe your passion would change if you had more of the facts. All right, let's move on to the reading from the prophets, from Amos 5, verses 4 through 6. Here's what Adonai says to the house of Israel: If you seek me, you will survive. But don't seek Bethel, or enter Gilgal, or pass into Be'er Sheva. For Gilgal will certainly go into exile, and Bethel will come to nothing. Oh man, yeah. And so Bethel was a place where these places were going to be judged because of the faithfulness of the people in that particular generation. It's not never ever go into Bethel. It's don't be going there now at this particular time. There's a context for this verse. Same thing with Gilgal or Shava. Um, but there's a key element that never goes away here. Adonai says to the house of Israel, he says, if you seek me, you will survive. If you seek him, you too will survive. You got to seek him wholeheartedly. You've got to be sincere. If you do that, you will find him. And he longs for that. It's not his desire that any should perish, but that all should come to everlasting life through faith in Yeshua. But you've got to do your part. The gift is there. You've got to take the gift and stop your rebellion against him. All right, let's go to the writings now. In Psalm 25, again, Psalm 25, verses 15 through 18. Where David says, my eyes are always directed toward Adonai, for he will free my feet from the net. Someone trying to trap you, someone has already trapped you, Adonai can free you. He's well able. He will free you if you ask. Turn to me and show me your favor, for I am alone and oppressed. Maybe you feel alone and oppressed. Maybe you have this heart today. The troubles of my heart are growing and growing. Bring me out of my distress. It's a cry for aid to Adonai. I'm sure we've all been there. See my affliction and suffering, and take away all my sins. Take all my sins away. See, there's a connection here. David is noting a connection between his affliction and suffering and his sins. Sin does bring suffering, and in the end, it brings death. It might not be economic. It might be mental, psychological affliction and suffering. Knowing the things that you did, how wrong they were, and knowing your end. In any case, and that's the reverse is not necessarily true, by the way. It's not that any kind of affliction or suffering is caused because of sin. Look at the story of Job. Look at how some of the believers in the first century and beyond were martyred. And believers in God before that as well in the Tanakh were killed because of their faith sometimes. And so don't judge people just because they're suffering. But if you're suffering, do some introspection. See if there is some sin that you have not repented of in your life that might be blocking your blessings. Right? Common sense. And let's go to the final reading from Matthew. That's Matityahu, chapter 26. I see something. Oh, Nancy Carl. Shalom, shalom. Boker Tov. Boker Tov, Dave. It's good to see you. All right. And here we go to Matthew 26, verses 30 to 32. All right. And this is at the end of the last Seder, the last Passover meal, eating the Passover lamb after it's already been eaten, and they've had the afikomen after the meal, and they've shared the cup of redemption. It says here, after singing the Hallel, it's taken for granted. That's part of the ritual, part of the ceremony is you sing the Hallel, certain psalms that are sung after the meal. After they did this, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Yeshua then said to them, "Tonight you will all lose faith in me." After they just had this beautiful experience with him, right? He comes out and then he says, "Tonight you're going to all lose faith in me," as the Tanakh says. That's why he knew, because the Tanakh said, it was prophesied, "I will strike the shepherd dead and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." Now that happened with them for a time. It would be fulfilled because it was prophesied. It's part of God's plan. But after I have been raised, I will go ahead of you into the Galil. So there's a promise there already that he would be raised. And after he's raised, he'll go ahead of them and he'll meet them there. "I will never lose faith in you," Kepha answered. Maybe some of you, so this is like a pride. It's going against the prophecy. "Not me. I'm too good for that. I would never do that if I were there," kind of attitude. Well, it's good that, you feel you have strong faith, but, prophecy is prophecy. If it says something, God says something's going to happen, it's going to happen. Even if everyone else does. Yeshua said to him, "Yes, I tell you that tonight, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." And that's a couple verses farther than I was supposed to go. So I'm going to end there, and we'll talk more about that in another video. If you want more of that story, of course, it's from Matthew 26. So feel free, help yourself. But those are our readings for today. I hope you found some meaning in there for your life, and I hope that you have a great day. B'Shem Yeshua. Shalom, shalom.